Welcome back to the Uninsured Ankles podcast, everyone. I am joined today with my co-hosts Jordan Stratton and Haley Everett. Josh has a day off, kind of like Jason Tatum's career. No, not really. He's really good, but no one cares.
They're
What's going on with
boring.
you guys? They are so boring. Why they're good, but they're boring. No one cares about them. I think that makes Josh really mad, but I really like it. Jordan, how are your Lakers doing?
I can't complain. We're sitting at fourth in the West and making some steady upward strides. Our defense since the beginning of December has been a top 10 defense, and then we add uh Finney Smith to the roster with the D'Angelo Russell trade. I don't think anyone in LA is complaining about losing D'Angelo Russell. You know, respect the time he put in with the team, but it was time to go, and Finney Smith fills a bigger need for the Lakers. We've got with Austin Reeves having more of the breakout year, or at least over the last month or so, he's been playing uh, like everybody expected him to, coming off of FIBA. He's finally having that breakout. I mean, he just had a stretch of 3 games where he was averaging 30 points, 10 assists, and 8 rebounds or something like that. So those are the things we love to see. He's able to take some of that ball handling pressure off of LeBron. We had Christie just dropped 28 a couple nights ago. So if we can get outputs like that from him, he's been consistently scoring double digit points in his last like eight or nine starts, which is really all you want from him. Shooting a decent percentage, which is more than we were getting from D'Angelo. So moving on from him and adding in someone like Finney Smith, who's one of the best point of attack defenders in the league historically for the last 3 or 4 years. Um, I'm feeling pretty good, and I think our record over the last 8 to 10 games reflects a lot of those changes um, that they needed. They needed D and 3-point shooting, and they got both of them, and dropped their least consistent player on offense. So I'm happy about it.
That's awesome. I do want to take a quick moment here and admit that Austin Reeves has not been mid. I know I said this on our Thanksgiving podcast, but he has been playing beyond mid plus maybe even. But
I,
like, no,
I
I'm
wasn't
kidding.
I
He's
wasn't
playing.
gonna I wasn't gonna talk about the Lakers without noting how amazing that he's been playing since
He's
you
been
made the
playing really
comment.
well.
He probably tuned in
Tuned in.
and watched
Probably.
you say that I mean, along with the rest of our 15 viewers per pod, he definitely tuned in and had to make some adjustments.
He took it personally. I get that.
He did.
My voice carries a lot of weight. I get that. Haley, how are the Hawks doing?
3 game losing streak, which we don't love, but I can live with it. 2 of those games was no Bogey, no Jalen, and I mentioned before, I think we don't operate without Jalen Johnson right now, which is just not the same team. But I can live with the losses, and one of those games where we were semi full strength was against the Lakers, and yeah, just I think we had the worst 3-point shooting night of the season, which isn't necessarily why we lost.
No,
We
I
just
wouldn't say that was why you lost that game. I think the most telling play of that game was there was a play, you guys missed a shot, AD got a rebound, he made an outlet pass to LeBron, and LeBron lazily was catching the pass, and Dyson Daniels stole it from him, drove the lane, totally got AD to commit, threw a behind the back pass to Jalen Johnson, and AD recovers to get a block on
oh my
Jalen's
gosh,
dunk, and then pushed it the other way, and LeBron hit a three. So
just
I
better.
I think that just summed up that game for you in a nutshell. Hopefully,
Yeah,
the Hawks don't turn into the fakers.
they won't. We're fine.
Everything's fine.
Yeah,
As
no,
the
it's
house is burning around him.
this is like one of the longest road stretches, I think, for any team this month. And we've also played more games than most teams. I think we've played 3 more games than most teams have played at this point in the season, which is not, this happens every year. Like some teams play 5 games in a week. Some teams get the 2 game schedule and whatever. It's just part of the schedule. Like
Whatever, not salty.
yeah, it'll come back around at some point, so we'll be fine. But they end their road streak and they come home to the Houston Rockets. And my lovely wife, Olivia, shout out to her, got some really awesome tickets to that game. So we're going to see them on their first game back. I'm very thrilled, excited to go. But
That'll be
yeah,
sweet.
yeah, for sure. And I really am not too worried about where they're at right now. I think that these were going to be really tough games. LeBron's always been a Hawks killer. Like we've just never had anybody who can really guard him extremely well. And then AD's also somebody that
Beast.
we don't match up well with. Um,
He's a
and then,
little more mobile than Capella, a little bit bigger than Okongwu.
yep, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like
I mean,
it's a nightmare for us.
that's pretty much 80 against most starting centers, though.
Yeah, fair. Lakers should be winning more games. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
They're
And they
moving up
are
though, fourth
of
in the
late.
West.
Yeah.
They're doing well,
Big.
coming back around.
I also got to tip my cap a little bit to the Memphis Grizzlies because despite their injury riddenness, are still somehow sitting at number 2 in the West. So I'm not going to be drinking any Kool-Aid because I think I'm banned in the state of Tennessee from buying any Kool-Aid. But tip of the cap for sure.
Yeah, you can't even cross over the Mississippi River, brother.
He's
I'm
always
not
welcome in North Carolina.
That's it though. That's
That's
You
it.
gotta smuggle him in.
There's a little border, and I have to be within that range.
Airdropped. Anyway, yeah, that's why we take planes.
How
Yep.
about those Pistons,
I'm
Nicholas?
feeling good. We've won 6 of our last 7. We're nearly at 500. I think we're sitting at the 8th or ninth spot right now. Cade's having not just an all-star caliber like performance over the past month or two. It might be all NBA. He's playing lights out. Um, I'm really excited about this team. They're going the right direction. Even though Jaden Ivey had a horrific injury this past week, which yuck, 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 yuck. I've
Yeah.
got a squeamish stomach, and that was not fun. Um,
Yeah, we had 2 broken tibias, or no, his was his
Fibula.
the fibula, but then Max Lewis, right after we traded him to the Nets, he just broke his leg a
Oh
couple
my
nights ago.
gosh.
And then you got Suggs going down with non-contact low back injury. Like I don't even know what to guess that injury was, especially with it being non-contact. Have they come out with a statement on what his injury was yet?
I
I
hope
have
it's
not
like a
either.
muscle thing or something like
Yeah,
that, not like
you would hope
not a
so.
vertebrae or a spinal cord.
Yeah, like maybe a pinched nerve or something, but still,
Yeah.
as if Orlando needed more injuries to worry about.
They've
Yeah.
got a legit starting
This
5 of injured people at this point.
Yeah.
they said back spasms.
Huh.
Yeah, nothing serious. Praise.
Y'all have anything on the Celtics?
No.
All right, let's move on. So
I did want to add one more note for your Pistons.
yeah,
I in my family group chat, we were talking about basketball the other night, and somebody mentioned, oh, Ant went for 53 and 10 threes, and so I pulled up the box score to see how much they killed the other team by. Lo and behold, it's the Pistons beating them by 15, despite the fact that Ant scored 53 with 10 threes. So that's not looking too good for the T-Wolves first, but also the fact that without Ivy, the Pistons were able to pull that off. Their bench guys and role players are performing a lot better than I think any of us anticipated to start the season, which has been nice. And the exact other way around for the T-Wolves. Julius Randle was atrocious. And I don't think anyone besides Randall or Ant scored in double figures. It was a tough scene.
Yeah, that's like a regular box score occurrence for them. I'm not a fan of some of the things coming out of Ant's mouth lately. Like, oh, whining about getting double teamed on a professional basketball floor when you're supposed to be one of the greatest, when you're the number one option anytime you're on the floor. That's what happens. Like, that is called respect, and learn how to combat it. Like, you got to have counters to doubles. I don't know what to tell you. You're a professional basketball player. Get over it.
He
And guess what? Everybody else on his team is a professional basketball player too. Pass them the freaking ball if you're double teamed.
he seems to be drinking a bit of the Jimmy Butler Kool-Aid.
Mm.
So that's a good segue, right? Jimmy Butler, there's been a lot of drama around him over the past month now, where his agent said he'd be open to a trade and he wants that trade, and then Pat Riley actually comes out and says, "No, we're not looking to trade him." And then he just straight up says, "I want to be anywhere but here." In a press conference past week, we are getting into near peak trade season here. We're what, a month away, almost exactly a month away from the trade deadline, February 6th. Who's moving? Who's not moving? Who do we think should be moving? Let's start with Jimmy Butler. Is Jimmy Butler going to move first of all? And where do you think he should go? What do you guys think?
Well, I think if any team was to not move somebody that demanded a trade, it would be the Miami Heat. So I could see a world where they just count their losses and essentially suspend him for the rest of the season for conduct detrimental to the team, and just take the L, finish the season, get a decent draft pick, and potentially move on after the season. If anybody would do it, it would be Spoelstra and Pat Riley. That being
I,
said, I don't think I don't think he'll be on the Heat.
Yeah,
but
Jimmy.
what is the direction of this team though? Like
Yeah.
where are the Heat going? What is Hero doing? Like is Hero your guy that you're building around? He can't be, right? Is it Bam? Like it's not those guys, is it? Those are supporting pieces.
You would hope that they're supporting pieces. I think they're starting to bank on Hero being their guy. And he's putting up numbers that would support that kind of decision. I mean, he's averaging 25, 5 and 5 or something like that this year on his most efficient shooting clips. So, and he's getting the most attention from defenses that he's ever had in his career, because Jimmy's been either basically nowhere to be found. He's been the least consistent star in the league this season, in my opinion. So all the attention, that first level defender attention has been on Hero, and he's still been performing. So I think that seems to be what the Heat are banking on building around. But I don't think that's going to be a core that's going to bring them any championships.
Yeah, they're in a tough position. Jimmy's got a player option for 52 million next year. Yeah, so that's going to be, I think he's going to be hard to get a good return for, but I don't think, I agree with Jordan. Like, the Heat aren't just going to eat the contract, because he'll just pick it up. Like, nobody's going to pay him 52 million, and he can pick it up and sit and whatever. But I don't. Yeah. Anyways, I think that he'll find a trade partner. I'm just not sure that they're going to be in the business of finding a good trade partner. Like, a good. It's not going to be, hey Jimmy, where do you want to land? We're going to find a good spot for you. It's going to be who's got the best package, and that's where you're going.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that is because of um, how the new salary cap works, and some of the new stuff that was worked into the new structuring that came out this year with the second apron, when it
Talk to me
comes
more
to,
about this, Jordan. I don't know about this second apron stuff.
well, and we definitely are missing our contracts guru in the
Yeah.
form of Esquire Barton today. But what I do know is that teams that are over the second apron do not have the ability to do a couple things. They can't move as many draft picks for future years. So it essentially, uh, if you're over the second apron, it's gonna put a cap on that, so that teams over can't just move a bunch of picks to bring in players to win now. It's essentially penalizing you and saying, hey, you're not going to be able to make as many win now moves if you're already over this limit. And it also they instituted a new thing where most trades there's an aggregator that you can combine player salaries to be a net wash, because essentially you need to have the salaries between players be similar across teams in order for the trades to go through. With the with the aggregator on with the second apron, it doesn't allow for the combining of salaries. So if you had a star player that was making 25 million a year that the team over the apron was trying to acquire, they wouldn't be able to combine two players' salaries that were 15 and 10 to get that $25 million player. They would have to give up another player that was making $25 million. So I think that points to where you're not going to be seeing a ton of Jimmy's top options on the table this trade deadline, because so many of the big market teams are right up against that second apron already, and they're not going to want to go over it, or B, if they're already over it, they're not going to have the resources already on their team to be able to make the salaries wash in a way that's valuable to them. Because a lot of teams could make a trade for Jimmy Butler that would be straight up a star for a star, and it would be a wash. But when Jimmy's already said that he wants out, there's no value in forking up your star if you're the not Miami team. Jimmy's value has gone down because he's established that he wants out. So teams are not going to give up as much.
So we're in this complicated situation where Jimmy wants out. Pat Riley will do what he's going to do. There's all these CBA collective bargaining stuff, like apron stuff that you just talked about. Where does he go? And let's just also put out there that this is not the first time we've had a disgruntled Jimmy. I think this is at least the third or fourth time we've had disgruntled Jimmy. Philadelphia and Minnesota ring in my head, but probably Chicago as well. Where do we put Jimmy? Where's he going to go?
That's a great question. I think that like you're dealing with a delicate situation where he's got to go to an organization with, well, let me rephrase. If you're moving him to a team that is trying to win, that organization needs to have good culture and needs to have like a fellow star that he will mesh with well. Like we talked about in our group chat, we talked about the Knicks, and I was like, absolutely not. Like that, the Knicks like whole brotherhood, happy go, like loving cult, like fun loving culture is not like I do not. That doesn't to me that doesn't like seeing Jimmy Butler. Now they're tough the way that they're tough in a different way, I guess, than the Heat kind of toughness is. Um, and then we talked about some others
if
too.
If you trade to the Knicks, you're going to be creating a cat reunion, and
Yeah.
it's just basically an automatic no. Like
Yeah,
regardless of what their culture is already, Jimmy has already had that relationship. It didn't go well. It's not happening again.
right.
And Cat is thriving right now. You don't want to
Yeah.
mess with that at all. Like this isn't like what's going on in Minnesota with Julius Randle in that trade. This is Cat thriving in New York. So yeah,
Right.
don't upset the apple cart.
But like I'm not even sure. Like I know that the Warriors have been like a hot team on like Jimmy or not, and it sounds like that they're gonna be out on Jimmy, but that doesn't like Steph seems like one of the most likable guys in the league, like across all player types. Like he obviously he can fit next to somebody like Draymond, but you can't put Jimmy next to Draymond. Like that's too much volatility in a room. And I can't imagine what a practice would be like with the two of them. Um,
One
yeah.
option that I haven't run it through the trade machine, and so Haley, maybe you can do this while I'm rambling, but is essentially well, it wouldn't be straight up, but a sort of a trade between the Heat and the 76ers for an Embiid reunion, because Jimmy's talked about a lot how he would love to play with Embiid again, and that the reason that he left the the 76ers had nothing to do with the team itself. It had everything to do with you know, the front office, and that they weren't offering him the money that he thought he was worth. And now that he's got the contract already, if he's able to potentially look past some of that front office stuff because he wants to play with those guys, then it might be something that he could explore. But again, that I know that Philly's got a lot of money on their um, on their salary cap already between Maxi and PG and Embiid, and even a couple of their role players are making more than I think that they're probably worth. With like Oubre, I think Oubre's making like 20 a year or something like that right now. So um, I think one of
I
the
Not
don't
the
I don't know if
one.
he's eligible to be traded, but I'd love to see PG for uh some Jimmy buckets. I would love to just see them give up on Paul George already.
I mean, look,
y-
he has been not great, and neither one of them are great, have been great so far, and I think they both know that their trade value is pretty low. And they the nice thing for the 76ers about making that trade, because I think at face value, my inclination is that PG is better than Jimmy at this stage of their careers. The nice thing about making that trade for the 76ers is Jimmy's on the latter end of his contract, whereas PG just signed for what did he sign? 4 years. So they essentially are getting that 4 year commitment out from underneath them for someone that maybe isn't quite as good. They're going to pay him a buttload for 1 year, but then they've got flexibility to potentially re-sign at a better figure for them, or do a sign and trade to get more value out of that player.
Do you
Um,
know who Miami can build around? Paul George.
Probably. I mean, he's that veteran presence. He's definitely more even keeled, I would say, than Jimmy. And I mean, they've got the role players, and they've got a center in Ware coming off their bench, putting up 25 points and no rebounds. But it's fine. Don't worry about it. Uh, I mentioned this before the season started. I think that he could be a guy that, if he really buys into Spoelstra's system, we could see him have he'll be pretty good in the next couple of years. But with Hero and I'm a big Jaime Jaquez fan because UCLA Bruins, let's go, and Bam holding it down in the middle. I mean, you add PG to that, that's a solid squad, and they
I'm,
hopefully they would get him to play more consistently than Jimmy has been. So
I'm bought in on this. Where else is this where we think Jimmy should land? Is this the consensus? Is there? I know this isn't even something we talked about pre-pod, but like, are there other spots we were thinking for Mr. Buckets?
I just kind of want him to go to a bad team, honestly, at this point. But I love Jimmy. I'm like I
yeah,
used to be a big Jimmy truther. It's just one of these things where it's happened, like you said, this is at least the third time where he's kind of like forcing himself out of a situation. And I feel like the Heat really like made him, they didn't make him necessarily where he is now, but they gave him the right platform and like the right structure and stuff. And they put pieces around him that were like very complimentary to Jimmy. And again, I'm not trying to like dog Jimmy. I would love to see Jimmy do well and like land in a good spot, but like I don't see that happening right now. I feel like the Heat are gonna go find their best package, and that's what they're gonna do. And I think it'll be like somebody like the Nets who can send them some decent guys who are on the same general timeline as Hero and Bam. Like they can they can put Cam Johnson in, who's got a huge contract, and you know acquire some assets along with that. If the Nets value Jimmy at that high of a I don't know, as that high of a talent still, but I'm not that's where like I just don't know who wants Jimmy when they don't know what they're getting right now because he hasn't been good this year and he was okay last year, but he was not the drug his team to the finals good from a couple years ago. So
Yeah, I think the only other possibility for him is you have to make a trade with teams who are feeling the same about the biggest name that they'd be trading. So I know another option that we had discussed potentially is a three-team trade with the Grizzlies and the Pelicans. And you would have
oh yeah.
it would be Jimmy and who is the other player from the Heat that would be moving? Um, it might just be Jimmy, or I think one of their rookies. You move those two guys. It would be the Heat getting Zion Williamson, who has he hasn't said explicitly that he wants out, but he has talked about wanting to be elsewhere um, over the course of the last couple months. And so it would be Zion and Jordan Hawkins from the Pelicans going to the Heat. The Grizzlies would get Jimmy, Daniel Tice, and Carlo Matkovic. That's the I think that's the rookie from I think he's from the Heat. He might have just been a throw-in. I don't remember. I don't even remember what team he's on. Sorry, Carlo. You have my apologies for not knowing what team you're on. But then Desmond Bain and Brandon Clark going to the Pelicans. Because again, you've got the three big names in this trade are Desmond Bain, Jimmy, and Zion. And none of their respective teams have really known what to get out of them. Zion's been hurt and has plenty of off the court stuff going on. Jimmy's been the same way, and Desmond Bain hasn't been able to stay on the court for more than 10 games in a row. And neither is Brandon Clark. Those are probably the two that are closest together in terms of what a team would be giving up. But you're essentially just swizzling around all those guys. Jimmy gets to go to a team that's relevant. He's wanted that, and they've got the cap space to do it. That could be an option that happens. It's probably not one that he would be the happiest with. But as Haley said, Jimmy can kind of suck it.
This feels like lose, lose, lose. Like that just makes me all sorts of ick.
I don't think there's a lot of good trade partners right now that I have seen anyways, where Jimmy goes to a good situation and the Heat get a good return. Like what Jordan just brought up is I think probably the Grizzlies end up losing the most because they do have such good chemistry with the guys who have been there. And like Clark and Bain have been a part of that squad for whatever, four or so years. I know it's not that long, but
But
like
they've been together the whole
they
time. It's kind of like the OKC team that they
yes,
haven't been
yeah,
together that long, but they all just feed off the same energy.
yeah, yeah.
And they know their roles. Like you know what you're gonna get out of those guys. I don't know what you're gonna get out of Jimmy Butler. I don't know if he's washed yet. I don't know if Zion's ever going to be anything in the league at this point. Desmond Bain, he's gonna shoot the crap out of the ball from three. You got that. You know what you're gonna get. Stand him in a corner.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're just looking at what they're giving up versus what they're getting, you give up Brandon Clark and Desmond Bain, and you're getting back Daniel Tice and Jimmy Butler. It's not like they've got Brandon Clark playing 30 minutes a game. They've got
Yeah.
him as their third center behind Edie and Jaren Jackson Jr. right now. So it's not like they're expecting more production than a Daniel Tice would be able to give you. So it feels like that, although Brandon Clark is the better player on that team, it feels like a wash. And then I'm taking Jimmy Butler over Desmond Bain pretty much every day of the week. I don't know about you guys. Now, the
Well,
the chemistry bit, definitely there's something to be said about that, but I feel like that could make the Memphis Grizzlies a win a championship now kind of team.
yeah, I just don't know. I don't know. It's hard. I don't love the fit that of Jimmy next to Edie, Jaren Jackson Jr. and Ja, like as their relative core. Like I don't know. That's a lot of clogging. the paint to me.
Well, that's what the NBA fans want. They want less threes, apparently.
You know what? You're right.
Give me we're creating like the 2000 Lakers or something like that. If Edie was just a completely undominant version of Shaq.
So I was toying around on the trade machine and realized it's almost impossible to trade Jimmy for Paul George because you have to have nearly exact salary matching. So that's probably not going to happen.
I feel like that's the theme of a lot of these trades this year is there's going to be like these guys who want to move and nothing actually just lines up exactly. I mean, one guy that we've been talking about being traded, I think since last season, was Zach LaVine, and one of the places we're having him hit was the aforementioned Grizzlies. So, where how are we thinking we can get Zach LaVine to the Grizzlies? We've been hearing about him wanting to be traded for 6, 8 months now. You guys got any thoughts?
Well, I think one option that the trade machine does like is the exact same pieces coming from the Grizzlies and going to the Bulls, and that would be it would be Levine for Bain and Clark. The salaries work, keeps everybody under their respective aprons. Um, but again, that trade feels worse probably than you're only getting one player back. If we want to say that Levine is that much better than Jimmy and Daniel Tice combined, that's I guess we could, but I don't think he is. I think he's had a really good year. He's younger than Jimmy, so it's nice, and his salary's lower, which is good. But long term, I don't know if the Grizzlies get much better. I think they're probably worse off than they would be making the Jimmy trade in that case.
Yeah. I don't think I could stomach that as the Grizzlies. What were you gonna say, Nick?
I was gonna say I feel like he's a better fit than Jimmy is at least. Like I think he fits in better with that culture and could assimilate and be a useful piece. You know, I have little bit of a tension with him and Job, but I think they'd figure it out a lot easier than Jimmy would. Jimmy, I think, wants to be the biggest dude in the room, and I think Levine can be the backseat to Ja and others and kind of assimilate. But as far as you know, pure basketball players, yeah, Jimmy's better than Levine. I get that. Like if we're choosing a trade one over the other, that yes, we will take Levine or we take Jimmy over Levine, but I don't think it's going to be an either or situation for Memphis if both those trades are presented to them.
Yeah, I think Levine's obviously the better shooter than Jimmy is, and that is probably the bigger need that they would have, especially since they would have to offload Bain. Bain is a fantastic spot up shooter. Not going to go and hit a bunch of step backs, but he's a great spot up shooter, and Levine is also a great spot up shooter, but can also create his own shot. So he is a great 1B. I don't think he's ever claimed to be like the primary ball handler, and that seems correct. He's not going to be your point guard. He's not bringing it up the floor. He's been fine with DeRozan bringing it up the floor, with Kobe White bringing it up. Obviously, he wants to be the guy, but he doesn't. So I think he'd be okay with Ja, because he's fine not being that primary ball handler. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's probably going to happen. What I would see happen before I see that trade is a trade to the Spurs, perhaps. I know last pod we talked about a potential trade with some of the Spurs just have a swath of guys all 6'6" and under that fulfill basically the same role. They don't need the amount that they have. And you can see that by the fact that guys like Castle are when Vassell is in the starting lineup, Castle only plays like 18 to 22 minutes a game, which I think he would play 25 minutes on most rosters in the NBA right now. But they just don't have the minutes to go around between Vassell, CP3, Keldon Johnson, and Castle.
Shanthony.
they're everywhere.
Yeah.
So they've got
So
the pieces to move on that front, and they've got room to play at the small forward. Because right now, pretty much Keldon Johnson plays some small forward, but other than that, it's just Harrison Barnes, and and he leaves a little something to be desired at this stage of his career, and so they could use some extra firepower filling in that shooting guard to small forward position, and so they could move Keldon Johnson and Vassell, and the salaries match up to bring in Levine. Um, if I'm the Spurs, I probably make that trade. I think that takes them from an 8 seed team up to a 4 or a 5 seed team, and that kind of team can make a deep run in the playoffs when all the stars align. Being a top 5 team is really just where you need to be in the West. Otherwise, you're going to be running into too many uh, powerhouses.
yeah, Haley, last pod you were talking about, not wanting you wanted them to stay put. You wanted them to hold unless there was something really juicy, but you wanted them to kind of be in step with the young guys that they've got growing up on that team right now and just bide their time. Does this fit within that vision, or is this getting ahead of their skis?
I I think in the long run, it just like doesn't move the needle enough for me to want to do it now. I'll say like generally I don't hate it. I think Levine would be a really nice fit next to their vets and their young guys. I think that like Castle's going to get mentored by CP, and having Levine as more of like the creator side, shot maker side, like that could be pretty cool for Castle to have like both of those two guys to be like um what's the term, like cutting his teeth with, like the that would be, that'd be cool. That I think that would be good for his progress. Um I think I'm probably a little higher on Vassell than most people. And a lot of that has to do with like the Hawks not taking him, and our fan base is just like we like to torture ourselves about people we missed on. Um, but yeah, like I also don't think that keeping them moves the needle much. Like they're just not going to get there right now is I think where I'm at. And as long as they don't like I've seen trade rumors where Castle's in them, and I'm like, no, just full stop. Don't do that. I think I saw De'Aaron Fox for somebody in Castle, and I was like, nope, not doing it. I'm just not. Like I'm letting that guy develop and figure it out. If he's not the one for to like be the paired guard with Wemby long term, I can live with that. But it's too early for somebody who's built the way he is and plays the game the way he does. Like he's a demon on defense. He reads the game well. Let's let's let him figure it out first. So anyways, long-winded way of saying like I can live with it if they did that, but it doesn't move the needle enough one way or another for them to like really take a leap. Um, and I think the Bulls, if they are going to trade Levine, would want to find a good landing spot for him. Like I don't think Levine has been a bad um like member of that organization by any means. He's just had some really bad luck. Um,
Yeah,
and
I
like
think he got a little bit of a tougher rap over the last year and a half than he was really due.
yeah,
He kind of had a well, he's had a bad trade name for a while, and he's kind of revitalized that this year, which has
yeah,
been cool.
yeah.
Um,
I've really enjoyed him this year. Like I know we're not gonna get like peak Levine again, but he's still got a little juice in the tank, and like dude can go get his shot, and he's not. I mean, he poured it on the Hawks a few weeks ago, and that was against some of the best perimeter defense in the league, and it was it was very frustrating to watch him just pull up from, wherever he wanted, whenever he wanted. And I was like, all right, yeah, that's probably going to go in, even though Dyson Daniels' hands in your face and he's chasing you around 3 screens. And anyways, I like other pairings for Levine a little more, where I think that maybe he does move the needle. Um,
Where is that?
there's a Nuggets trade out there for Mr. Michael Porter Jr.
Before we move on to MPJ, because I know we've got a few potential landing spots for him. Last week we did talk about the Spurs, the the Spurs moving a couple of their guards to potentially get De'Aaron Fox. And I know, like you just said, they need to hang on to Castle, and I 100% agree with you. Now, one thing that does make its way through the trade machine is if they trade Vassell and 6 first round picks,
I saw
you
this.
can successfully trade for De'Aaron Fox. Is that a trade that would move the needle enough to warrant the loss of that many picks? I think it
Those
might
are
be
all
yes.
first.
Like I see this is where like I'm just not as high on Fox as some other people. Like not I like Fox. I probably like him more when he gets off the Kings. Honestly, like I don't
You're
like the
you're
way the
just you're
Kings
just a
currently
Kings
play.
hater.
I'm not even I used to really like the Kings. I've just started to enjoy them a lot less recently. Like
I
it's
started to enjoy them a lot less when they fired Mike Brown. That was just that's just an L of an organization over there. Now, I do like me some Doug Christie, fellow Pepperdinian. However, Mike Brown has done nothing to warrant getting fired after turning that team around.
Yeah,
So
none. One more thing on the Fox Kings and Vassal trade. Like you don't give two, four, six rounders up for him. He he's got a year and a half left in his contract. Do you
I,
want him again? You've got CP3 right now. Like what are we doing? Like this is not it.
he's your
It's just
long
not it.
term he's your long term filler for CP3 because I think we know that he's gonna be retired in the next 2 years probably,
It
and if they're able to re-sign Fox and pair him next to Wemby, come on.
No, I think you're banking on Castle, and if it's not Castle, you have one, two, three, four, five, six first round draft picks you want to take a pass on instead of Fox. Like I love Fox, I love the Kings. I'm still out there with them, but that's not the move. That doesn't help anybody. Helps no one. Lose
I do
lose.
I do agree that picks are getting more and more valuable
Yeah.
every single year. The talent pool in the draft classes is just getting deeper every year. So it's 6 would be obscene.
Yep.
yeah,
Very
yeah.
very similar to I don't know, giving up 5 for Mikal Bridges, but whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be six, just to be clear. It could be
It could be
five
5.
or four or three. Like it could be fewer. But yeah,
But the Kings probably aren't going to accept less than 5
yeah.
if all you're giving them is Vassell.
Yeah, and I mean, at that point, you have to know. Like, you got to know that Fox and Wemby are getting a chip together, and I don't think you know with those two.
So we talked about the trade of Zach LaVine for MPJ. I think we touched on that in previous pods as well. That's one I would love to see. I'd love to see Jokic get some help consistently. He's not getting it. Murray isn't what he was before. MPJ isn't doing what he was before. Denver grew up. What are we gonna do? Give him LaVine. So MPJ might be on the block as well. Where else and who else could we be moving him for to get Jokic some support down there in Denver?
Yeah, as much as I like the Levine trade, which is like a reasonable amount, I really like MPJ for Cam Johnson, and there's a cap filler in here who I'm not gonna find it right off the DeAnthony Melton, which like I also really love DeAnthony Melton, one of my favorite role players. Just a 3-and-D menace, and he has like no qualms just going out there and being like a Chris Dunn like type of player and just like playing his ass off on defense. And if you want him to shoot, he can shoot. He's a very formidable 3-point shooter, and he's really athletic too. Anyways, all that to say, Cam Johnson in the MPJ role is like I think that MPJ still has enough like weight behind his name where a team can take him on and they say, you know what, we're gonna let you be like our 1A, 1B guy, like on the Nets, he gets to go and be try to be the guy and it seems like that's where he's wanted to go. Not Brooklyn, but seems like he's wanted his own team, I think, since he's gotten the league, and probably before that just has kind of had that bravado. And maybe that's just a misread on my part, but um that's the vibes. We always joke that MPJ is a black hole, and once the ball gets to him, it's going up. Uh, but Cam, like, I really like what Cam does the little things, and he's still an elite 3-point shooter. He's probably a little less athletic, like at least vertically than MPJ, but he's a pretty good rebounder. He's a pretty good defender for his size, and I just like he's playing really well right now too. If he
I
can
mean,
stay healthy.
he's just got way more intangibles than MPJ. He does everything besides spot up shooting better than MPJ, and maybe rebounding, but that's like it's enough of it's close enough that it should be a wash, and he's doing this on the Nets, who are trash. So just thinking about how much better playing with Joker will
hmm
make Cam.
And he was so good with the Suns with stars in their place, and it's like that's
He's
probably
a
better.
weapon.
Like it's a better situation than the Phoenix situation. It's obviously better than Brooklyn.
Well, and
Um,
it seems like the Nuggets are at least finding their groove a little bit. Westbrook seems to be fitting in better than most people anticipated, except for I think Josh, who predicted that he would have an up year. And then Murray's been playing better for the
mhm.
last 10 games or so. He's averaging about 23, 24 points a game in that stretch. And they've been winning games. They just had a really fun game the other night against the San Antonio Spurs, and
hmm
Joker punked Wemby on offense. Wemby didn't look good defensively against Joker, which was it was it was cool for me. I've had my qualms about Wemby, like people know, but I've been super high on him on the defensive side of the ball. To see Joker find to still be able to find the holes was really impressive, and it was just he had three plays back to back to back where he just isolated Wemby defensively. The first one, lower to shoulder, straight into a baby jump hook, made it. Next possession down, lowered the shoulder, pump fakes the baby jump hook. Wemby bit on it because he was slow the first time, got him up in the air, leaned in, got an and one. Next time down, isolates him one on one, barrels into the middle, does a half spin back the other way. Wemby got burned the last two times, so a double came, and he kicks out to whatever was it, Strother. What's his last name?
Strawther.
The
Strother.
Yeah.
Strother, and he knocks down a three. An immediate like 8-0 run for the Nuggets off of just isolating Wemby in one-on-one action. It was I
Yeah.
had you got to give flowers to Joker. He should
For
win the
sure.
MVP, but he won't.
They
For sure.
they had, just for like basketball lovers, obviously Wemby's gets plenty of hype, so highlights have probably been everywhere. But if you can get like a condensed version of that game, or if you want to go watch a replay, they had back-to-backs, and both of them were like elite basketball games. And it's like as advertised type of stuff. Like Joker and Wemby both have crazy games in both games, and they come down to the wire. So watch them if you got League Pass. If you don't,
Definitely worth watching. And as much as I hate on Wemby, he did have the third 20 and 20 game on one's birthday of all time. I think it was the stat was it was the first one since Dwight did it back in 2020, or no, 2017. I think it was when he was on the Hornets. And then the only other one before that was, I believe, Shaq's 60 and 20 game that he had on his birthday back in like 2001 or something like that. So not bad company to be a part of if you're Wemby. He seems to continue to find himself in ridiculous statistical company.
Yeah.
So we have somehow made our way back to Wemby, and I have a question about him.
Oh no.
He's gravity. We're ESPN now, guys. So it's
Ah.
just we're drinking the web nog. Theoretically, and just completely theoretically, we've been talking about who we're pairing Wemby with long term, and why we can and cannot be making trades for the Spurs. Who in the league do you want to? Who would complement him? Who do we want to see him actually like throughout the trade machine, throughout everything? What is the dream pairing with him? What does that actually look like? 5 years down the road, who's Wemby playing with?
I'd love to see him play with Ant because that would just be one of the most explosive duos in the league. I don't think there's any way that you're able to make a trade like that work,
Sure.
Ooh,
but that would be fun.
what about like just in the same ilk of a player? Because I was thinking about these like highlight reel type guys, like Benedict Mathurin or Shaden Sharp, like these dudes who are elite athletes and still young. Like they haven't made they they have a name. They both have names for themselves, but like outside of big time basketball aficionados, like those guys are just
Role
some random
players.
dude. Yeah,
Yeah.
but like yeah, I think I really don't know still. I
John
think that
Morant,
you
maybe?
I don't want anybody who's going to take the ball too much out of his hands, but I
Fair.
also think he needs like a good facilitator around him.
I don't know
I
if you
mean,
know this, but John Morant's a top 10 passer in the NBA.
I agree. I agree. I'm not here to set Josh aflame. He probably feels himself burning from the inside as we speak. But like when there was talks about Trey and Wemby get somehow finding their way on the same team this summer, they were talking about like Trey possibly getting traded to San Antonio. Like that could be a crazy fun duo.
It
Um,
would be ridiculous.
yeah.
I would be very in on I would watch every Spurs game if those two were on the same team.
I want Trey to be a few years younger, but that's the one I'm biting on. I like
He's
that a
tw
lot.
he's like 24. Like he's young.
He's not 24. No way.
Let's
How
look it
old
I
is
up.
mean,
he?
he's still like 5, 6 years older than Wemby.
Yeah, but Wemby's like barely an adult
Trae Young's 26.
still. That's still pretty young. That's you've got a good 7, 8 year window
Yeah,
that you're gonna get peak because that's the nice thing about Trey is he's not good because he's a crazy athlete. He's not the fastest guy. He's a shooter and he can pass it like crazy and play
yeah,
well out of a pick and roll. So his game's gonna last. It should be kind of like CP3's. It should be able to have some serious longevity. But
yeah.
back on
So
Anyways,
what are the
the Cam Johnson topic though, another team that could use somebody like him, I think, is potentially the Cavs. If they want to really make this their go for a year and have a chance to take out the Celtics in the playoffs, I think they need one more piece and one more upgrade. And they've got enough depth that they've got guys to move. I believe I can't remember what the extra guy from the Nets was, but I know it was moving Levert and Struce
Mhm.
for Cam and who is the other guy that was in that trade?
Zaire Williams.
Also, yeah, not a bad piece there. You're no, he's not as good as the other two pieces that are coming from the Cavs, but Cam is, in my opinion, clearly the best of the four players in that trade. And you put him in a situation where he's got stars around him to get again that are drawing a lot of attention. Because right now, in Brooklyn, he's got to be out. Well, outside of Cam Thomas, he's got to be the number one threat that teams are um, that they're making their scouting reports based on. Like,
Are they making
eh,
scouting reports for Brooklyn?
Chill. Yes, you have to make a scouting report for Brooklyn right now. They're way
Fair,
better than they should be.
fair,
that's
fair, fair,
correct.
fair,
And I
fair.
think we talked about that at the beginning of the season too, that we expected them to be terrible, and then they've just been in dogfights pretty much every single game. And part of that probably is that that the game plans that are being created are not as elaborate as they are against most of the other teams. In an 82 game season that's this dense, there's just no way to prepare as much as you would like to for every single game. So
Yeah.
yes, they definitely have to circle these games and be like, all right, we're going to prepare for, these actions, these couple players, as opposed to, when you see the Celtics coming up and you know that you need to pull out all the stops against the defending champs. You're gonna have a bit of a bigger game plan. Uh, but yeah, right now he's the number one or number two option for them offensively, and going into a situation where he's the third, maybe the fourth option, depending on how you're feeling about Mobley and how matchups are shaken out in on that front. He's going to be able to fill a role at a much higher level than either of the two guys that they'd be giving up, which I think gives them the opportunity to really challenge the Celtics. I mean, you could even bring them off the bench and have whenever either Garland or Mitchell go out, you still have those two guys that can be, primary ball handlers or just primary options on the floor together, even when one of your stars goes out.
Yeah, I think so. Just some relevant context. Caris LeVert is a Kenny Atkinson guy. Like, back in the Brooklyn days, Caris was one of the dudes who like was a part of the dragging them into a playoff series when they had no business being there. But um, I don't I don't think that he can't get moved. I don't think Max can't get moved either because Max hasn't hardly even played, or I don't even know if he has
He's
played yet.
back. Yeah, he's
Okay,
he's played the last like 7 or 8 games, I think. But he came back
so
after their winning streak was over.
yeah. So I mean, I know that I went on a long Cleveland rant in one of our earlier episodes, but they do have enough pieces. Like Ty Jerome is proven to be a great facilitator, and that's one of the things that Caris LeVert's so good at is being like this six-man secondary ball handler, uh, can run your bench unit, and once you get into the playoffs, you're running eight guys, eight, nine guys, and
At most.
Struce, yeah, and Struce and LeVert are a bit. They're not exactly duplicative, but they play the same position, and they also play the same positions relative that your two best players play. So yeah, like you're telling me you're not just like getting the upgrade over one of them two, but you're upgrading from Dean Wade to Cam Johnson. And yes, 100 times, yes, thank you, please. And like it's this kind of the same thing we were talking about with the Nuggets. Like there's a lot of good landing spots for Cam if the Nets are serious about trading him. And I'm like not to say that they are, or I'm not really sure, but um, like he can be the fifth guy on a team, and that's like a really freaking good fifth guy. And that's likely, in my opinion, where a lot of teams can send back some stuff, like people who have some assets that aren't like the Nuggets don't necessarily have like great assets to send back. And the Cavs don't necessarily either, but at least they have picks. Like they at least have something that they can provide to you and like players who are actually decent. Like Chris Levert's not a bad player. Max Strus isn't a bad player. If you want MPJ, like maybe he's the truth and he just hadn't been by himself, which I don't believe, but still.
Yeah, and just another potential landing spot because I think you're right. I think Cam, of all of the players that could be a good plug-in for a team that wants to push for a championship, it feels like with where his salary is, it makes him very tradable because most teams have very recently signed guys to more than he's getting paid, which means he'll be up for a payday for his next contract if he keeps playing like he is. Um, but it makes him very tradable right now, which I wouldn't be surprised if the Nets move him, even though we haven't necessarily heard a bunch of chatter about it. I mean, yeah, they're clearly not opposed to trading players on their team right now.
They're
Uh,
trying to lose. That's the thing.
yeah.
It's like the front office wants them to lose.
Cam Johnson's a winning player. He's a mature player. Like he stepped into the league. He knows what his role is. He does all the little things that Jordan mentioned before, and he would elevate pretty much any championship contending team.
So
And
and that's where I was trying to end up going is another team that could be a really good fit for him, I think, would be the Houston Rockets. Because
Mm,
they've got enough again, they've got enough pieces, young pieces that would be tempting for the Nets and in guys like Cam Whitmore or
Reed.
yeah, they
Like
they've
if
got they've got a bunch of pieces, and they've still got draft picks too. Well,
yeah.
actually, Brooklyn has some of their draft picks, but they do have draft picks down the line a little bit that they could put into a package too. Um,
That has been something that's been brought up though with Brooklyn. Like they could send as a sweetener some of the picks back to Houston.
mm,
So it's like that's
so maybe putting like a Fred Van Vliet into a trade or a Jalen Green into a trade.
yeah,
Um,
it's like okay, we can sweeten that by sending you your asset back. Um, yeah.
I
It's
guess. I mean,
I
it
don't.
just depends on what outcome they want out of it. I feel like Houston wants to keep the trajectory they have going, and I doubt that they would want to lose the stars that they have. I think they would be more looking to add.
Yeah.
Houston doesn't want any moves. They want to let everything settle, in my opinion. Like they who is their 1A guy?
They don't have one.
Well, I think
They're
Sengun,
they have three twos. They have Fred VanVleet, Jalen, and Shingun, and not a single one of them is a one. Like that's
yeah,
just my opinion. Like they're awesome, but they're not ones.
well, I think where
Like
I was going with that is if you look at everybody else on their team, Fred VanVleet won't be there in a few years because he's older and they're going to get rid of him. But I think everybody else on that team is young and hasn't really been proven yet. You could see, Jabari Smith was a top pick at one point in time. Reed Shepard has got capabilities. Shingun is great. Green has possibilities, right? Like who's your 1A got to be? He might be on that roster right now. He just might be too young and not there yet. And I don't know if you want to start tossing the dice that you might throw one of them, like one of those
mm.
kind of guys out there, and you lost your lot, you lost your face of the franchise because you didn't weren't patient. Like, how bad do you think the Clippers feel right now for trading SGA?
I think they're
I
pretty
mean,
sad.
I think they're pretty sad too, and I
yeah,
think
but
that's what
they did have some like decent years, and they had
Yeah,
a
they made
lot
a
of
second
misfortune.
round.
They had a lot of misfortune though, like, and they were never, they haven't been, they're still not bad. Like, they're still a decent, like a good team in the West. They're 20 and 15.
See how
So,
long that
Jordan,
lasts.
I've got a question for you. Where is
Yeah,
SGA in the MVP ballot right now?
that would be number one.
He's just well above the guy in Boston.
Yeah.
He,
Oh,
he's
far
a
and away,
top
it's
three or four guy.
not
I
even
don't
in
think there's a
discussion.
Clipper on that list, though, is my point. Like you can call him one, two, three, four. I don't
Norman
care
Powell's
right
my
now.
MVP.
That's fair. That's fair. All right, you win. You win. No, but I think that's what I'm saying. I think in general, you don't want to roll the dice on your up and coming guys. You didn't want to get rid of Castle for a reason. You don't want to get rid of Green, Şengün, and all those guys quite yet, unless you
Yeah,
know
but
you're getting it in
that,
return.
see, I think with Houston, because of their depth and because, like, just specifically with Cam Johnson, if they say, all right, we're going to send you Cam Whitmore or Reed Shepard or whoever, and
Tyrese and
the cap filler, then we want one of our first round picks back. And now you basically have a redo. So now you're getting your pick back and you're saying, all right, now I'm going to take another swing. And they've been quite good at drafting. Like that's why they're so good because somebody's doing the right thing there. Like they know how to scout, they know how to pick them. Like Reed Shepard's buried on that bench right now, and he was what third or something this year.
yeah, he's a
So,
hooper.
where are the Rockets in the West right now? What place are they? I think second,
Third behind
third.
Memphis. Yeah.
Okay. So they're probably going to be bottom five, bottom six in the first round. All those pieces you just talked about, Haley, are lottery picks. Like there's a difference between being a top 10 pick and getting a Reed Shepard than there is like back of the first and picking a Reed Shepard because you're not getting Reed Shepard there. You're not getting Jalen Green there. You're getting different
You're
value
getting
getting versus that.
Bronny James.
Oh,
They're getting Bryce.
Getting Bryce.
can't even
No,
start
yeah,
a
I
high
mean
school
that
team.
that's fair, but they all like Cam Whitmore was middle of the first, I think, and
Well, that was just a
that
snag. That
He
felt
fell hard.
well, yeah.
but it happens every year. Like every year, somebody gets a bad rap and they fall, and somebody's like, all right, we'll take the flyer on them, and they don't all turn out, but no draft picks always turn out. There's not a single draft pick that you can point at and say that's the one that I need. Like the number one maybe, but even so, like people still whiff.
No, that's for sure. That's for sure. I'm just
Yeah.
saying the hit rate is higher in the lottery than it is at the back end of the first, and so all firsts are not created equal.
Yeah, but like all drafts aren't either. So
That's true too. We've talked about a handful of teams that need to make moves to elevate their respective selves to championship caliber, to be, right there contending at the end of the year. What other teams have we talked about that need to make a move? What teams have need to add a piece, need to elevate somewhere that don't have that piece right now? And I don't think we can talk about the Lakers, Jordan. They've made so many moves, and we have to see what Finney Smith is going to do. But they're not hesitant about making moves. But who else out there needs to make a move?
I I think this goes back to our talk at the very beginning of the season in our first pod. We were it's basically Thunder and Celtics and nobody else. And right now, I get that the Cavs are doing this thing, and I'm probably the highest of anybody on this podcast. I'm probably the highest on the Cavs of all of us, and I still think they have no chance when the playoffs come. Like it's going to be the Celtics and probably the Thunder, but the West is getting a little more murky, I think, with the some of the competition at the top in that top six. Really, like those teams are going to be all tough, but the Thunder look like they're becoming more and more the truth, and like
Well,
it's I don't.
let's talk about it this way because this happens every year. A top team gets crippled by an injury. What if
Mm,
the best player on the Celtics, Jalen Brown, gets hurt and then they're just toast and have nobody that could carry them? What then? What team out could the Cavs beat the Celtics then, or would someone like Cam take him over the top, or could the Knicks maybe add an additional piece
mm.
and take out a best playerless Celtics?
The Knicks need a coach who's for real in the playoffs, and they have Tibbs, so sorry.
Who
They
doesn't
can't do any.
murder his players before the main dance?
Yep.
I I don't think we have a 1A player on the board to right now that we know about. Is there like there's not a guy who's gonna lead you through a playoffs, and that's not what we're
No, but yeah, and I don't think that's the point.
De'Aaron
It's
Fox.
oh well, yeah, De'Aaron Fox is on the
fair,
board.
fair,
Um,
fair.
but I don't know that that's the point that Jordan's necessarily trying to make either. It's just like is there a team that can be brought over the top from where they're at right now? Because the Cavs first four are probably the best top four of any team, like in combination of your top four. But
Probably.
their next five aren't your best five. Like you got some questions, some big questions there. I do not want to be running Dean Wade for 30 minutes in a playoff game. I just don't. I don't want to be running for 25 minutes. Like 15, sure. But I want him to be my last guy in the rotation, not a must have in my rotation. Um, no shade to Dean. He crippled the Celtics
That sounds
in a
pretty
game
shady.
last year. I mean, I'm not a professional basketball player, but um, anyways, there's yeah, but sorry, tracking back, Jordan, that's a good way to frame it. Like, is there a team who makes a move that gets them past somebody who's crippled or even just like a little bit banged up? Because we saw that last year. Like the Mavs might have won had Luka not been playing on a leg and a half, and the Pacers certainly wouldn't have made it through the playoffs had the Knicks not been down their whole starting five plus some. But that's Tip's fault. So anyways, I
Nick
don't
slander
know.
continues.
Yeah. I do think like I'm pretty interested in a lot of the teams in the West more so than the East. Because I think the gap is so big on the teams in the East and the Celtics. Like I still like I'm not sure what the Cavs will be in the playoffs. The Bucks are like three moves away. They're a long ways away. And then the Knicks are I mean they could be
They
elevated
could
by
be
a
there.
move or two. But
Yeah.
I mean yeah, I'm not gonna slander Tips again, but
I mean, we've hit a lot of the high end seeds here at this point that we think everybody's chasing OKC and Boston in a lot of respects. I think the one that we didn't hit that's kind of a higher end seed that we haven't talked any trades or anything today was Dallas. Is there anything they can do to elevate themselves other than get Luka healthy?
yeah, get Luka to lose some weight. Like, brother, that team is built the right way. Like their we this is a team we talked about before the season, and their pieces are proving it. Like those guys are doing what they came to do, like what they were brought in to do. And the guy who's not is Luka. Like Luka came in overweight, and now he's suffering overuse injuries, not because he's getting ran into the ground, because he's not healthy. Like he needs to take better care of himself. Anyways, sorry. All that to say, sure, they could make a move, but I know I said this last
The move isn't
pod.
going to help them. Nope.
I know I said this last pod. I wouldn't make a move if I was Dallas. I love the pieces that they have. I think that they've done a really good job of like filling in the gaps that they got great perimeter defenders. They have the one of the best two-headed monsters at center that there can be. And then you have Maxi Kleber to throw in as like a third big in the rotation if a team goes big against you. Like I just don't I think that they have the pieces to make it really difficult on OKC and to make it difficult on anybody. Like, but
And now they
that
have
in
the playoff pedigree on that team too, because not only
mhm,
have they made a finals run now, so and are essentially running it back with almost the same roster, but then you add Marshall, who fills, like you said, fills that defensive void, and you add more playoff experience with Clay. Um,
mhm.
you
And
know,
Grimes too.
yeah. So I think you're right. I don't think a move is gonna unless you're somehow finding an upgrade to one of those. Not You're not going to be able to take two of those guys, plug in one guy, and have the team become better because they
Yeah.
all fill a role on that team. You would need it to be a 1-to-1 upgrade, which means that, I mean, I guess they could, you know.
Jason PJ Washington for Cam Johnson. Like, I don't
I don't
know.
think that I don't even think that's an upgrade. I think you would
Yeah.
need, yeah, because PJ fits that team so well. I think it would need to be like Clay and a pick for somebody that's a borderline all-star type deal for it to be anything that's going to make them more of a win now team. Um, which feels bad because right now they're not making that out of the West. Yeah, come on, Luka. Get on the treadmill, buddy.
Or at least the elliptical.
Yeah, I was gonna say the elliptical to keep the impact down on those joints. Recumbent
Just
Jeez.
bike,
sit in a sauna for a little bit, like sweat it out. I don't know.
melt it off.
All right, gentlemen.
He's pulling the shack. He's gonna play games to get himself in shape. But Shaq stayed healthy. That's how he was able to do it. If you keep getting hurt, you're never gonna get there.
Are there any other moves we think should happen before the trade deadline in a month? Anything else? Anybody else need to make any moves? Lakers always need to make a move. We know.
They probably will, and if they won't, or if they don't, we're not making it out of the second round.
Hey, at least you're making the second round.
Hey, look,
Y'all are
Stones
gonna
are
make the
in
play-in
the
for
playoff.
sure.
Yeah, they're in the play-in right now, and
I,
the bottom half of the East is not looking pretty. So, I
mm-mm.
mean, look, all they need is an injury to the best player on the Celtics, and they're going to take him out in the first round.
I mean, from the
Yeah.
top three on the East,
I
there's
mean,
not really much going on. So
Kristaps is already hurt, so like the best player on the Celtics is down.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess if the second best player goes down in Jaylen Brown, then I mean it's just that's just easy pickings from there.
you guys haven't talked about Drew Holiday. I thought he was the best player on the team.
Yeah, and Derek White. Mm.
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
at the very least, we're talking about the players that actually show up in the fourth quarter.
All right. That's a good note to end this bad boy on. Gentlemen, we will wait with bated anticipation to see what happens as the trade deadline looms and comes ever closer. It's been a pleasure talking about it with you guys. We'll see what happens. Any parting thoughts before we close?
I'm just looking forward to whatever monologue we're going to get from Josh
Oh,
on
it's gonna be
next
so good.
pod.
It's gonna be so good.
It's gonna be so good.
Just a quick question as the host, can we mute him?
Yes, yes.
Okay, cool.
I will mute him the moment we start recording next time.
Sounds good. Love it.
Oh.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Keep your friends tight and your ankles tied up even tighter. Have a good one.